Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a wonderful day today. Now today I'm going to go over the books that I read in the month of August. So in the month of August, I read a total of 6 books, which equaled to a total of 2,583 pages, and I had an average rating of 3.75 stars. So my reading in August was a little bit back to average reading for me, which is amazing at the moment because I'm having so much trouble focusing on books compared to what I was doing at the start of the year, for example. So I think that having 6 books read this month was a really good achievement for me, and I think that was exactly what I needed to jumpstart myself back into reading, and hopefully the next month sort of goes the same way. So now I'm going to go into those books that I read in August with you. So the first book I read in August was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. So this is basically set in the Hunger Games world, and it's during the 50th Quarter Quell, and it's Haymitch's story. He was in the Hunger Games where they had 2 times the amount of tributes. So from every district, they had 4 tributes chosen. And I really acknowledge that this book is meant to be for the nostalgia that people have. I think that if you're not a fan of this series, you're not going to like this book. This is purely for the fans, in my opinion. This author has said that she won't publish a book unless she has something to say. And I just felt like this book didn't have anything extra to say of what she had already said in her past books. It's like she wanted to, in the current times that are happening at the moment, especially in America, I think she wanted to make it relevant now. So a lot of her series you can make relevant now, but if people aren't thinking about it, then they don't know that. So it's like she almost wrote this book as a way to make it relevant to the times right now, which I understand, don't get me wrong, that's fantastic, and it did sort of get that message through. But a lot of this book was characters that we've met before being clumped into the one book. So it's not just Haymitch, it's Effie, it's Plutarch, it's Speedy, and it's Wirus, and it's basically all of the characters that we meet in Catching Fire and Mockingjay are clumped into this book as if they're all around the same age or they're all around the same time period. So they're saying that this is the beginning steps of the rebellion that happened in Mockingjay. And that means, and I understand this, it can take this long, but that means that there was 25 years before they could jumpstart the rebellion again. So at the end of this book, they say stuff like, oh, this is the beginnings of something. Maybe you just weren't the right person. We'll find the right person. And then it took them 25 to 26 years to find that right person. And then that person was linked. Like, I understand linking it to people that Haymitch knows. Katniss and everything in the future, linking it to people that he knows. Because, like, District 12 is not a huge place. Like, you're going to come across characters that you've seen before. And I do like how it links those together. They did try to link the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes to this in the way that you're sort of getting a little bit more lore about what happened to that character in that book. But you still don't, like, it's still a mystery. But you've got connections. So, like, for example, in Haymitch's book, the Covey is still really a thing. So having that sort of perspective, I really enjoy those things. But I'm a fan of the series. I'm a fan of the movies and the books. I rated this book 3.5 stars because of my nostalgia with the series. I don't think that it was the best thing she's ever written. I just think it was mid. I think that it needed more. It definitely needed more, because I enjoyed the parts of this book that were in the Hunger Games when he was surviving and trying to just get through and not die. Those parts were on point. But in saying that, it was almost like everything was too easy for someone who's in a Hunger Games and there's like so many cameras on him. It was almost too easy, some of the things that was happening. So just, I don't know. It's just that there are things that didn't didn't go in depth enough, and we went in depth on things that I thought didn't really matter because we already knew those things. And if you're writing a book that's purely nostalgia, purely for the fans know all this information. You don't need to go into depth about it. I understand that some people, probably coming from an outside perspective to read this book, I don't recommend doing that. If you haven't read The Hunger Games, you're not going to understand anything that's happening in this book. And that's also why I'm saying it's for the fans. It's for people that love this series. So all in all, I loved the history this book gave. And I loved the development deeper into Hamish's character because I was waiting for that. I think that was something that we really wanted. But I think that the clumping of so many characters just to put them in a book so we had some semblance of their character before the Hunger Games trilogy, I think that actually took away from a lot of things we needed to rely on. This book is just as brutal as all the other books are. It does rip your heart out to a certain extent, but I think I felt less of an emotional connection to this book than I even did to Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And that was about the villain of the story, basically. And I think I was more emotional in that and more connected to the characters in that than I was in Hamish's story. And I think that she wanted me to be connected because certain things happen that you need a connection to the characters to feel the depth of how hard it is. But also, I really don't like what happens to a certain character after Hamish's Hunger Games end. I don't like how that happened. I understand in the context of Coriolanus Snow, the president, and what he likes to have happen as his form of like people that don't agree with him or that he doesn't agree with and what he does. But I didn't like how fast it happens, so I didn't get a connection to it. I didn't feel it. But I do understand how Hamish is in the future from this experience. But it didn't go in depth enough for me, and ultimately that was the downfall of it for me. And I don't think it had anything new to say. I just didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to, and I was really hyped for this book ever since it was announced. So unfortunately, it didn't do well for me. I might watch the movie when it comes out if it gets made, but the way that the movie for Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes did not hit as hard as the book, I don't have high hopes, but we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, that was my thoughts on Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. So the next book I read was for my local book club, and we read God of the Woods by Liz Moore. Now, in my book club, we, at the start of the year, all put in a book recommendation, and I put this one in because it had won the Goodreads Choice Awards for that year in the mystery thriller category. So I thought that'd be a great book to read, and I don't normally read that category, so I thought, why not give me a chance to go into it? This book is basically about a girl that goes missing from a camp, and it's also visiting the fact that her brother also went missing. It's like trying to discover what happened to him, but also what happened to her, and trying to sort of go back and forth in the time frames to do that. So I read this as an ebook. I didn't listen to it as an audiobook, but I do have some insight into what the audiobook is like, so I will go into it a bit. But my experience with the ebook is that the jumping through the time frames was actually kind of confusing, but the chapters starting with the year in bold on what we're reading from and whose perspective was very, very helpful. And I think without that, it would not have done anywhere near as well for me. It was fast to read, but very slow paced. And there were things that were happening that made sense for the ending. Once I got to the end, like in hindsight, it made so much sense. But there's some things that were said that I think was to just build the book out a bit. And it was almost like it was an excuse that when something was about to be revealed, we would skip back in time or we'd skip forward in time, and we wouldn't know that, and we just get something that didn't need to be there, but it was almost like it was put there purely so that you kept your anticipation for this reveal in the next chapters. And like, I understand that completely, but that did slow down a lot of my friends reading it in the book club, and it was making me a little bit frustrated when I was trying to keep my momentum. But like I said, it was a fast read because it was so easy to binge read. But yes, so slow paced that it was almost contradicting itself and fighting against itself. About half of my book club read the ebook or read it physically, and the other half listened to the audiobook. Everyone that listened to the audiobook rated it so much lower. Like, we had 1 stars and 2 stars. I think they were saying that in the audiobook, the time jumps were not specified and you didn't know whose perspective you were in. So it wasn't said that you were in such and such's perspective, and it didn't say what year you were in. So like, we had perspectives from one person that were going through like 3 to 4 different years. And even if you knew who you were reading from, you took a while to like realize what year you were in. And I actually think that that was to the detriment for those people that listened to it, because like, not everyone can read a physical book. Not everyone has time. And this book just didn't come through with an audiobook. Everyone that read it physically rated it sort of a 3 to 4 star. Everyone that listened to the audiobook rated it like a 1 to 2 star. And I just had to say that in this video, because if you're wanting to read this book, the audiobook is not a good option at all. There's only one voice, so many different perspectives. Like, there's over 7 perspectives in this book. And you have like, I can't remember, I think there's like 10 different time frames that you're jumping between. So definitely, if you're going to read this book, physically or ebook is the way to go. But I did only rate it 3 stars myself because I predicted the ending. But I do that in a lot of things, like a lot of murder mysteries. I have a good time trying to figure it out, but I figure it out so early. Movies or books, I always figure it out very quickly, but I enjoy the journey to figure out if I'm correct. And in this book, I figured out both reasons for both disappearances pretty early. So it wasn't that it's a bad book or that it was too easy, because I always do that. I always predict those things pretty early on. And I say that a lot about like mystery thrillers or murder mysteries or whatever. I just figure it out so quickly, which is why I don't read them as much. But acknowledging that, it did bring the rating down a little bit, because the way the things were revealed, it made sense and it was a good journey to get there. But I hate how one of them was sort of brushed aside more than the other. So we like sort of found out what happened, but then it was just, and then the other one made more sense and was focused on more. Like, it was a good experience. 3 stars isn't a bad rating at all. I had a good time reading it for a genre that I don't normally read from at all. Like, I'm more focused on fantasy. I'm starting to get more into romance, but it's like little bits. I think that just having this book even get to a 3 star was pretty good for it. But yeah, I think that ultimately it had too many time jumps and too many characters. Even though it was easier to understand by the end, if I had a break throughout it and came back to it, I had to remind myself who certain characters were before I could get back into the book properly. So ultimately, just a mid sort of book, but it's not bad by any means. But I can see how it could be bad and how it could be good. I'm just sort of in the middle a little bit on that one. So the next book I read was Big Bad by Chandler Baker. And this is a part of like a series that I've been slowly reading little short stories in. I decided to read this one because I was sort of in between a book series, which is the next one I'm going to talk about. And I wanted something short and different to jumpstart me back into that series. And so I chose this one. And this is basically just a short little werewolf story in a family. That's basically all it is. I can't say too much because it's like 59 pages. It's not that long at all. And I would give away huge plot points if I said a lot. The basis of the start of it is that the mother in this family is a lecturer or something at a university. And we go into how her husband just isn't at the same level as her because he has different priorities and he's sort of preparing for something. And he seems a little bit OCD about it. Like, things have to be a certain way and everything. And you can see he's preparing for something that's going to happen that night. And he's worried about it. I actually enjoyed this book more than I thought I would. I rated it a 3.5 stars. But I have never read a book that uses the word slurp or slurped or slurping or slurps. so many times in such a short span of pages, but also just in general for the things it was describing. Like, the little girl was getting slurpy because she was starting to get emotional and about to have a tantrum. Okay. The mother was walking out the door and she slurped snot. And I was just like, whoa, okay. I was in the book and then I'm like, ugh, okay, I'm out again. Cool. There were certain things that, like, obviously I've read horror books that describe themselves like this and use these words a lot. Like, it's not a huge thing, but oh my god, it's added that word to my list. Between moist, supple, and now slurps, I can't do it. It's horrible. But as much as that book ruined that word for me, I did enjoy the familial journey throughout this book and the sort of mystery and intrigue that was happening. I think you're meant to be sort of considering what could be happening. Like, you're sort of in a mystery sort of veil, trying to figure out what's going to happen throughout this book. And for a short story, it did do that really well. I just think that the writing is not for me. Like, I could see that the book was good and I enjoyed that, but some of the word choices were a bit much for me. But also, the whole time I thought this was a man that had written this, not just because of the name Chandler, but also because of the voice that it was written in. I thought it was a man that had written it. Like, I've read horror books from men's perspectives. I've read mystery thrillers from men's perspectives. I acknowledge that that is a style of writing and not necessarily a gender of writing. But that style of writing, I just think is not for me. I think it was just too grotesque for me to actually enjoy. Like, it used words that really triggered me a little bit rather than words that describe it well. Like, I've read some gnarly books, but the way things were described was almost too grotesque that it took me out of the story. So I think in that respect, that's why I didn't like it as much. But it's a 3.5. Like, the story was really good. I really enjoyed that concept, but I don't think I'm going to reach for this author's books again, short story or otherwise, just because I didn't really vibe with that writing. So the last 3 books that I read in August were all in the same trilogy, and I'm sort of going to go through them one by one, hopefully not overlapping too much until we get to the last book. But this is a series by Kate Drumis, and the first book is called The Curse of Saints. My experience with this book was so good. This book is so character driven that it just gets you so into the characters' heads and their relationships and attached to them. It's almost like in doing that, she has made it so that you can't see the plot twists coming. So it was like distracting me almost from the reveals that were happening in the book. Like, I had no concept of how this book was going to end because I was so enraptured in these characters' lives and their struggles. And the approach to religion in this book was so believable and realistic that it just grasped exactly what you needed for the characters. So, like, the characters are going through things that they're sort of thinking, why have I been given this by, like, there's more than one god in this world, so why have I been given this by the gods, and how could they give this to me? Like, I can't handle this, why would this happen to me? And on the other aspect, oh, I've done all these bad things, what's going to happen when I die? They're not going to forgive me, they're going to send me somewhere else, and I'm not going to have their respect, and the gods don't like me, and because of all the decisions I've made. And from someone coming from a life where I've always questioned that, like, why have I been given this thing? Why am I the one that goes through this? Why not anyone else? And people saying to me, you only get given what you can handle. But in my head, I've had enough. Like, I can handle it, but stop. It's enough. Like, at this point in my life, it's enough. Slow down, stop. I don't need it. I don't care if I can handle it. I don't want this. So, like, having that in a book, in such a character-driven book as well, and you get in depth with it, was so good. And I think the characters and the way that the author writes the characters so damn well is what made this book a 4.5 stars for me. It just did it in a way that you didn't forget about the plot or the world building because you're approaching it within the minds of the characters. but it's distracting you from things that are coming, to the point that things happen and you're just like, oh my god, didn't see that one coming. That came so out of left field. I don't know what is happening. And it makes you want to move on to the second book immediately. It hooks you so deeply. The characters' relationships, even like the slow burn in this book, was so tantalizingly addictive. I was in tears when the main male love interest revealed what he felt and thought and how he'd protected her and how he understands her. And it hit so hard because the characters were done so well that I was sobbing my eyes out while he was professing his love and everything he had done to protect her. And I'm just here like, I'm done. I don't know what to do. I'm a mess. And then right after that, that's when the first kiss happens, and I'm so overwhelmed by the emotional mess that I missed the first kiss and had to reread it. And then something else happens afterwards. I'm like, oh my god. Like, the whole book was just so good. It was missing certain things. It didn't get to a 5-star because of repetition that was happening outside of the character development. So it's like we were working so hard on the character development that everything outside of that to do with the plot was just to sort of move it along a bit so you're not so in the characters and so we're moving along the actual story. Like, the magic system in this world was so diverse and was like really in depth. We had like elemental powers, we had like mind powers, we had like life and death powers, which is basically what healers were, and we had like sensation abilities and persuasion abilities, and like all of these things was happening. I can see very loosely how the magic system is related to the Harry Potter magic system, wherein the fact that if you suppress that magic or that power, it's going to overwhelm you, and it could be literally to the detriment of your life that it's like that. And I actually like that approach, that it's like magic isn't so easy, and it's not like just a limit that you have, but it's also dangerous. Like, things could happen to you if you suppress your powers, if you don't acknowledge it, if you're trying to hide it. And on the other spectrum, it can affect you if you want too much power and you're trying to take it by force. So I really enjoy that sort of magic system and the way it's described. But yes, this book was just a 4.5 stars, and it was perfect, and I moved straight into the second book. And the second book was The Curse of Sins. And this book got a little bit darker. We went back to the main kingdom and we were sort of going on a bit of a explorative journey in not trusting certain people that you'd had beliefs in your whole life, but also not understanding how to live your life anymore because there's new scenarios you've been put in and pressure you have on you, and all you understand is what you used to be and not what you are now. And the struggles that the characters went through in regards to that, all of them, was just so well done. Like, again, the character writing is so well done. The reason that this book went down half a star for me to a 4-star is because it needed more plot in this book. Like, I understand the first book and you're being more character driven and the plot's like, yeah, whatever. But it's also, in the first book, it was still done to the extent that I understood what was happening once I got to that point that I needed to understand it. But in the second book, we had things happening that I was losing the plot a bit. It was almost like it was too long. There were too many pages, and we had the same character development, but we needed more plot to move the story along. This is a trilogy. We're on the second book. You would think that I would have more of a grasp on exactly what's important and what is going well in this book and what's not. And it just was moving too slow, and it took me a lot longer to read because I had like outside things happening that was distracting me, but also it was hard to get back into it. So we were doing reveals on this side of the ocean, and then we'd skip to the other side of the ocean before we got the outcome of those reveals or those events happening, and then we'd skip back and then we'd get the emotions of them, but we're like still across the other ocean, like what just happened there, and we kept going back and forwards, in my opinion, at the wrong times. I could see what she was trying to do to get you sort of captured into the story and the reveals a bit more, but it was almost just annoying because the other perspective went on for so many chapters before you went back to that reveal. So it did get a little bit like that. But once we started to move forward with the plot, in the middle of the book. Once we started to move with it and it was rolling, it did become a lot better and reminded me why I liked the first book so much. And don't get me wrong, the end of it was a good sort of mystery reveal thing. Like, it was very much giving me Cassandra Clare reveal at the end. But we got to a point in this book where we were traveling over oceans, and they were explaining how it takes weeks on these oceans to travel by ship. And then all of a sudden we get to the end and we're starting to travel faster. Like, we're not expecting people to get there in time, but all of a sudden they got there in time because someone has wind powers or whatever. And to a certain extent, yeah, okay, but also not that much faster, surely. So, like, I still enjoyed the book. I still acknowledged that the characters were really good. It only went down half a star because I could still see how good this writing was, but I think we started to feel the downfall of a character-driven book in an epic fantasy world, when we're losing a bit of the plot as we go along and we're focusing too much on details that don't need to be focused on, but I understand why they were for the character development, but they could have also been replaced by more important things or just taken out completely and it still would have been fine. Now, as I finished this book, it did end on a huge cliffhanger, but I had to sort of give myself a break and I read that short story I talked about, and then I came back and I listened to the ARC copy of the audiobook that I received to finish off this trilogy, which I didn't know it was a finished trilogy until I was reading this book and looked it up, that this is the last book in the series, because as we were moving along, I'm like, surely this is not going to rush at the end. But ultimately, it did rush at the end. So, majority of this book was one of our main characters in a situation separate to the rest of the characters, and the rest of the characters were journeying towards her. Because the characters are separated, it could have had a lot more depth into the plot in this, and the political systems in this world could have had a lot more detail. Because at this point, the characters, we've gotten to know them, we know they're attached to each other, we know their connections. We're putting in characters in this book that are just purely there so that someone has a love interest at the end. We're putting characters in this book that are just there so that it challenges someone else's perspective. They're in there for like 5 seconds sometimes. But we're also reading this book and we're going, okay, I get the characters are like this, but where's the politics? Where's the danger? Where's the reason why we're so, like, adamant that this has to be finished a certain way and we don't know what's happening? And all of these things were forgotten because the author is so good at writing characters. I honestly believe that this would have been better if it was a standalone. I understand you couldn't do that with everything that happens. I understand that completely. But I think this author would be better at writing standalones or duologies, because then you would get the character-driven writing that we so loved at the start, but we wouldn't be missing the danger and the plot. Like, this third book ended, like, I had, I think, 10% of the audiobook left. Maybe even less. I think I had 5% of the audiobook left. And we were just starting to get the ending. And I'm like, okay, I guess this is an ending to a trilogy. But if we did it differently, we could have actually had more at the end. Like, it wasn't even explained properly. Like, there were gods involved. They were there for 5 seconds. I don't understand. I don't understand how it ended so much like this. Like, I rated this a 4, and then I thought about it. I'm like, it's not a 4. I'm sitting here giving it a 4 because of what my experience was with the first 2 books. So I rated it a 3.5 at the end of it. I just think that it needed more detail for the ending. Like, if you're going to end an epic trilogy like this, you can't just brush it aside very quickly. I understand battles seem quick when they're happening, but we had so many perspectives. We could have done this so much better. It didn't hit me the way that the first book did. And as the books went on, it just went downhill. I think that she could have done it differently and it would have come out a lot better. Like, the plot, I mean. The characters, perfect. Perfect characters, perfect character adventures, the conflicts that the characters were going through with their beliefs and the people they trust and, like, everything like that. And the plot just went like it didn't matter. I just had a little bit worse of an experience with that third book. And I don't know how long it took to work on, because again, I've had these 2 books for a while. Like, I don't know whether the third book was like a full year after or longer or less or whatever, but it was almost like it needed more finessing at that ending, because we'd built up this ending all through the 3 books, and the setup for this third book throughout the start of the third book and the end of the second book was so good. It could have been so good, and then we just flicked it off like it was a flea, like it didn't matter. So ultimately I was disappointed in that, and I will read her books in the future. Authors develop over time and they get better over time. Like, I have faith that her next book will be better, but it just didn't end well, I think. They were all the books that I read in August. I decided to clump in the series together, and I think that made it easier for me to talk about, because then I'm not like just going between books and then coming back, oh, this is a series and everything. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to like, subscribe, go back onto my channel, watch some of my previous videos. That would help me out a lot, but also it would help me raise my community so that I can be talking to like-minded people that enjoy books as well. So I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week and a wonderful September. We're just coming into spring now in Australia, so it's getting brighter and hotter, and I hope that wherever you are in the world, whether it's autumn or spring, that you have a wonderful rest of your year, and I will see you in the next video.